Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from PBI 2. We are from group 1 of English language teaching subject. And our members are Efa Wulandari, Fitrah Taqwa, Izza Choirunnisa, Sari, and Nur Laila. First, I would say thank you to my lecturer is Mr. Umar Abdullah PhD because giving us chance to present our presentation by online. Okay, let's begin our presentation. The first presentation will be explained by Izza. Okay, this chance we talk about disciplinary intervention. What is this? Disciplinary intervention is an individual classroom teacher can use. It means that we address it the strategies teachers can use when students do not follow the rules and procedures that have been established. Why the discipline is made? It's for by doing the discipline there is a established a combination of a management at school level and effective management at classroom level. As you can see, there is a possibility of students and teachers can achieve the goals of good condition of classroom. The next slide, there is a finding research identifying by stage and careers. By identifying by stage and careers, we get 4 categories. First is reinforcement. Reinforcement means that if the student do good behavior, student get a reward from the teacher. And the second is punishment. If the student do bad behavior, student get punished from teacher. And the third is no immediate consequence. It means that if the student do a bad behavior, the teachers only just remind the student. For the example, if the student judge another student, the teacher just only reminds student don't do it again to other. There is no punishment. And the last is the fourth is combined punishment and reinforcement. It means that you have the teacher combine for giving punishment for the bad behavior and reinforcement for good behavior. Okay, the next slide, there is a figure 3.1 from the research and theory finding from the strategy stage and career study. As you can see, the below words of disciplinary technique, there is 4 categories that I have already explained it. And the beside words of disciplinary technique, there is a range of effect size, number of effect size, percentile decrease in disruption. Okay, as you can see, at least 2 rather striking aspects characterize the finding reported in figure 3.1. First, the intervention that do not include any type of reaction, positive or negative, to student behavior have the lowest effect size, negative 0.61, which although is the lowest effect size, is certainly not small. This makes good interpretive sense. Human beings do best in environment of feedback. In this case, feedback to distinguish between appropriate and inappropriate behaviors. And the second is apparently contracting the position of those who reject any form of punishment as a viable disciplinary activity. The effect for the intervention that use punishment is quite respectable, is negative 0.78. A note of caution is appropriate here. This finding should not be interpreted as indication that any form of punishment is viable. As you can see, there is 2 categories are the lowest average effect size. It means that it's not appropriate to do disciplinary and interdisciplinary intervention. And there are 2 more. The categories have get the high average size. It means that the category is appropriate for the classroom. In summary, the punishment and reinforcement that enforces to reduce disruptive behaviors works in public school. Okay, thank you. And the next presentation will be presented by Khofifah Indah Sari.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Khofifah Sari. I will continue to explain material about disciplinary intervention. Okay, the first presenter has explained the data findings from stage and queries. To build that findings, the researcher organized the studies in meta-analysis into 5 categories of intervention. Okay, let's take a look to the figure 3.2, the effect sizes for disciplinary intervention. There are type of disciplinary intervention. The first is teacher action that includes the verbal and physical behaviors of teacher. The second is tangible recognition, includes the strategies in which students are provided symbol for appropriate or inappropriate behavior. And the third is direct goals, involve a direct consequence for misbehavior. And group contingency is a specific set of student must reach, and the last home contingency is behavior monitoring at a student home. As you can see, beside that there are the average effect size as the real effect size we would obtain if we could eliminate all uncontrolled error in studies. And next, 95% confidence interval report the range of effect size in which we are 95% sure that the real effect size would be found in a study containing no error. And next, there is number of subjects or students and the number of studies and percentile decrease in disruption. Okay, for the teacher action, there are 25 studies that involve 1,191 students. It means that every studies probably involve 47 students. Okay, for the confidence interval range from -907 to -1087. It means that no smaller than -907 and no larger than -1087. Which is the average effect size is -997 and the percentile decrease in disruption is 34. Okay, for the average effect size of tangible recognition is -823 and direct cost is -569 and group contingency is -981 and home contingency, the average effect size is -555. For the percentile decrease in disruption for tangible recognition is 29, direct cost is 21, direct group contingency is 34 and home contingency is 21. Okay. Figure 3.2 also makes it clear all 5 types of intervention are associated with a decrease in the number of disruption. Okay, next we move to the effect sizes for the disciplinary intervention at various grade levels. Disciplinary intervention also have an impact on lessening student misbehavior at all grade levels, high school, middle school or junior high, and upper elementary and primary. For the high school, there are 7 studies that involve 562 students and the confidence interval range from -527 until -862. For the average effect size of high school is -694 and the percentile decrease in disruption is 25. For the middle school, the average effect size is -762. The upper elementary is -953 and the primary is -1046. And the percentile decrease and disruption of middle school is 28, and the upper elementary is 33, and primary is 35. As you can see, the average effect size of high school and the percentile decrease were lower, right? But this doesn't mean that disciplinary intervention are not effective or ineffective at high school level. Okay. How parents and students rank negative consequences. A number of studies have investigated the opinions of students regarding the effectiveness of punishment and reward. Also aiding in the parental perspective, these are 10 negative consequences for inappropriate student behavior that they are interpreted. For example, parents inform about disruptive behavior, and then students send to principal, and teacher explaining privately what was wrong, and so on. And then in figure 3.4, explain how parents and students rank negative consequences. Okay, from this data, parents rank being informed about disruptive behavior in school as the most effective negative consequence, and student rank this action second. And the next is student sent to principal, consider the second effective consequence, right? And so on until student took unfinished work to another classroom. As you can see, there are differences of opinion between parents and students, where students consider that students held back from going on school trip as the most effective negative and consequences until student move to another seat in the classroom and other comparison. Okay, maybe that's all for me. The next material will be explained by Efa. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, I will continue the next presentation. Here, the table 3.5 show how parents and students rank positive consequence. Here, the table 3.5 show how the differences opinion between the students and the parents. Parents considered informed about good behavior is most effective positive consequence for misbehavior. Okay, next, several factors of more disciplinary problems occur in public school. The first is first influence. We didn't realize if our friends has positive or negative effect to us, so they can influence us. The next is environmental influences. Of course, our environmental has impact to us. If our environmental is negative, we will follow them with a negative, but it depends to ourselves. If we can hold our principle, we will far from them and try to correction what is wrong with our environment. Is gender influences. Gender influences is also can influences our disciplinary. Emotional, of course, our emotional can influences. For the example, if our emotional is bad, we are not want to going to school or so on. And the last one is behavioral difficulties due to puberty. Our mood is up and down, and a girl can change their mood in 1 second, so it will influence our disciplinary. For the example, we not want to wake up earlier in the morning, and we will late to come to school. Okay, this is two program that emphasize disciplinary techniques. The first is think time. Think time is a highly structured program that has been shown to decrease disruptive behavior in student engagement. Assertive discipline. Assertive discipline is a widely used program based originally on traditional behavior modification approach in which misbehavior result in specific consequence. Here, three basic goals of think times. The first one is to provide consistent consequence across all teachers and in the school when the student engage in disruptive behavior. The second one is to enable teachers and students to cut off negative social and exchange and initiate positive ones. The last one is to provide students with feedback for their disruptive behavior and to allow for planning to avoid future incident of such behavior. Here, the current assertive discipline step. Actually, assertive discipline has a old step, but here, the current assertive discipline step. The first one is make sharper distinction between rules and direction, whereas direction vary from activity to activity. The second one is student of task disruptive behavior and distinguish from that of us non-disruptive behavior. If a student is off task but not disrupting anyone, the teacher redirects the task of behavior but imposes no consequence. Third, emphasize positive consequence to appropriate behavior, whereas the originally version placed more emphasis on negative consequence for inappropriate behavior. 4. Negative consequences are kept to minimum. The emphasis is on consistency as opposed to severity of consequence. The last one is tracking of behavior is a private matter as opposed to public matter, which was a prominent feature in on the original version. Here, 5 steps involved to implementing the current assertive discipline. The first one is focus on establishing a positive climate for discipline. This requires teachers to replace negative expectation of students with positive one. The second one is for teachers to about and practice assertive behavior. Teachers learn the difference between assertive, non-assertive, and hostile behavior. Ideally, teachers practice assertive behavior until it becomes habitual. The third, to establish limit and consequence. To signal students that they are approaching a limit, the teachers give hints to alert students, ask questions, and occasionally make demands. The third is following through on consequence if a student has exceeded the limits. The last one is to implement a system of rewards or positive consequence for positive behavior. These changes in assertive discipline are substantive and have transformed it into a program that employs a balance of negative and positive consequence as opposed to negative consequence only, as is commonly thought.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fitrah Taqwa. I'm from Group 1. Today I will talk about teacher reaction and tangible recognition. So, before we start our discussion today, let's say Basmalah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Continue to our material, that is teacher reaction. Teacher reaction, verbal and physical teachers' reaction are the simplest ways to acknowledge and reinforce acceptable behavior, and to acknowledge and provide negative consequence for unacceptable behavior. So the teacher reaction is very important. Why? The teacher reaction is very important when in the class we can tell the student when the student do mistake. For example, don't do assignment, don't do tasks, and he do something wrong. So we tell to our student that is wrong. You must change. Okay. So according to Emmer, Edberson, and Worsham in 2003, they have concluded the variety of teacher reaction that include the following. First, make a contact with your student. Make a contact with an offending student by moving closer to her. For example, we look at the student when they do something wrong, so that the student feel that what I have do. So the teacher look me like I'm a naughty boy. So the student will feel why I'm wrong like that. Okay. And the second, use the physical signals such as a finger to the lips. If there is a student disturb his friend, you just use your lip for a physical signal to in front of your mouth. For example, like this. That means to order our student to be silent. To be silent. Or shake of head to indicate that given action is inappropriate. If there's a student do something wrong, like a naughty boy, like this, shake of head. That means the student do something wrong, so that they feel why I do something wrong. I must refer it. Okay, and the third, if a student is not following a procedure, provide the student with a simple verbal reminder, ideally as privately and subtly. If the student does something wrong, we can tell them the truth. That with use privately. Don't say in front of people. If we say in front of people, the student will feel shy like that. And the third is if a student is simply of tasks but not misbehaving, simply state the desired appropriate behavior. If the student don't do assignment or homework, but they don't naughty boy or a naughty student, what should we do? We should tell to them to do the homework, and we give a support to do some homework. And the fourth is, if student does not respond to the more subtle intervention, simply tell the student to stop in the behavior. It means if the student is tell the student to stop the inappropriate behavior. And we continue to the tangible recognition. Tangible recognition, that is, I think that is reward when we have a smart student or student assignment like that. According to Khan, in 1993 till 1996, tangible recognition involves any type of concrete recognition or reward provided by teacher. So when we have a smart student, we have a give reward. give reward or advice like that. For example, when I was in senior high school, I have a smart student. I have smart friend that is the best. I think in my in my high school, the student is very smart. So the teacher give to give to him a reward. For example, give money like that for pay the SPP like that. It is important to not and the any system of technical recognition should be accompanied by thorough discussion of the rationale behind the system. So we should do. So we should accompany with by a thorough discussion. Okay. Maybe just this from me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay friends, my name is Nur Laila. Now I'm going to continue the explanation from Fitrah Taqwa. Okay, you can see the PowerPoint on your smartphone. The first, I'm going to discuss about direct cause. Direct cause techniques are more oriented toward negative consequence than positive consequence for student behavior. These strategies involve an explicit and direct consequence for inappropriate student behavior. One powerful direct cause strategy is isolation timeout. And now, what is isolation timeout? You can see, isolation timeout refers to removal of student from the classroom to a location reserved for disruptive student. The effective use of isolation timeout requires that students have a clear understanding as to the specific behaviors that will lead to its use. Additionally, students should be aware that isolation timeout would be used only when other attempts to correct disruptive behavior within the regular context of the classroom have been exhausted. Overcorrection is a procedure that is used when a student have misbehaved in a way that destroys or alters some physical aspect of the classroom. For example, if students' misbehaviors results in an overturned desk, then an overcorrection intervention would require the student not only to right the overturned desk, but also to straighten out the classroom. That is, the student would be asked to overcompensate for the behavior, thus sending a powerful message about its consequence. Okay friends, let's move to the next slide. Group contingency. Group contingency techniques operate in a fashion similar to congruent recognition techniques, except that they apply to a pre-established group for students as opposed to individuals. Okay, I will give you an example. You might establish some type of reward if the entire class remember to raise their hands before speaking out for an entire class period, or if they forget to raise their hands only a set number of times for the entire day. Research and theories commonly distinguish between independent group contingency techniques and dependent group contingency techniques. Okay friends, now I'm going to explain you what is independent group contingency techniques and what is dependent group contingency techniques. The first, independent group contingency techniques require every student in the group to meet the behavioral criterion for the group to earn credit. The previous example illustration an independent group contingency techniques because the target behavior of raising their hands before speaking out applies to all students. And now, what is dependent group contingency techniques? It is required a specific individual or a specific set of individuals in the group to meet the behavioral criterion for the group to earn credit. In the previous example, dependent group contingency would apply if one or a few students in the class were singled out for their hand-raising behavior, but the entire class received the concrete recognition. Obviously, the dependent group contingency strategy places a great deal of peer pressure on those who have been singled out. In fact, this appears to be one reason why it works. So friends, this technique is really recommended to you as a teacher. Let's move to the next slide. Home contingency. Home contingency simply involves making parents aware of positive and negative behaviors of their children. At a more detailed level, you might establish the system of positive or negative consequence to be enacted at home. This usually face-to-face meetings with parents to establish the specifics of this consequence. For example, you might meet with the parents of a given student to discuss the specific classroom behavior that will be targeted. Together, you and the student's parent will identify positive and negative consequences for the student's appropriate and inappropriate behavior respectively. With these parameters established, you would then keep track of the student's behavior and systematically report to parents so that they might enact the positive and negative consequence. To use positive and negative consequence effectively, you must establish limit. For example, assume that you are working on decreasing the number of times students talk without first raising their hands using a group contingency approach. It would be unrealistic to expect all students to remember to raise their hands every time they want to speak. With the students' input and discussion, you will identify a number of slips in protocol that will be considered acceptable during a specific time interval, let's say a class period. If the number of infractions were below this criterion number, students would receive some type of concrete recognition. If the number of infractions were above the limit, none would be provided. Setting limits is a perfect opportunity to involve students in their own management. Rather than you establishing the limits in isolation, the class could do so after discussing why the target behavior is important and what are fair expectations regarding that behavior. The limit established by a consensus approach will be the limit used by you, the teacher. Okay friends, I think that's all for my explanation. Thanks for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.